Welcome to Corner Coffee. This is Ava, and I have been talking with Cricket, and today we're talking about the marks we leave on the world, and the ones left on us. Have you ever felt a physical ache of grief for someone you never actually met? Maybe a favorite author or an actor who felt like a constant in your living room. Today, we're exploring why that happens and how we can prevent this second death by keeping those stories alive. Grab your coffee, and let's take a deep breath together.
Have you ever been surprised by the profound, almost physical grief you felt over the loss of someone you never actually met?
Oh, yeah, like a beloved public figure or an author, maybe.
Right, an author whose words got you through a really tough year, or an actor who just felt like a constant, comforting presence in your living room.
It catches you completely off guard.
It really does. You're just scrolling past the news on your phone, and suddenly there is a very real, very heavy lump in your throat.
Yeah, it's a strange but totally universally relatable phenomenon. Mourning a stranger who somehow felt like, well, an intimate friend.
Exactly. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are exploring exactly that dynamic and what it teaches us about the marks we leave on the world.
It is a profoundly fascinating aspect of human psychology. Because when we lose someone, whether they are deeply woven into our daily morning routines or sitting behind a screen on the other side of the planet, it forces a sudden pause in our
A
lives.
huge pause.
Right. We are abruptly confronted with our own mortality. But more than that, we are forced to process the void left behind by the people, who, in ways both monumental and entirely subtle, helped shape our identities.
And our understanding of the world. To help us navigate this incredibly complex emotional terrain, we are diving into a truly poignant essay today.
It really is a beautiful piece.
It's titled The Legacy They Have Left Behind, written by Cricket Fox. You might actually know her as the creator of the blog newsletter, This is Cricket's Coffee.
Or perhaps you've listened to her audio show, Corner Coffee with Cricket.
Right, so our mission for this deep dive is to explore the insights provided in this text about how we navigate mortality, how we process varying degrees of loss, and most importantly, how we can actively keep the legacies of these individuals alive in our own day-to-day lives.
The tone of this essay is quite remarkable, really, because it avoids the trap of becoming mired in despair. It captures the shared human fragility of grief, but anchors it firmly in gratitude.
Yeah, right from the start.
Right from the start, the core premise is established. Loss, whether of intimate mentors, family members, or distant public figures, echoes so loudly in our daily lives, specifically because these individuals have left their literal and metaphorical fingerprints all over our experiences.
Their absence is a mirror.
Exactly. It forces us to reflect not just on their lives, but on the connections you are making right now and the legacy you yourself wish to leave behind.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the emotional core of this essay is actually highly actionable. It argues that one of the most meaningful ways to honor the departed isn't just quiet, solitary mourning.
No, it's active.
It is active, vocal storytelling. The text paints this incredibly vivid picture of how to do this, sharing stories that transport us back to warm moments. Laughter over meals, shared adventures, the quiet, unspoken comfort of evenings spent in each other's company.
Those memories are framed as a literal, functioning bridge connecting us to their spirit.
It's such a beautiful image.
It is a crucial transition from passive grief to active preservation. And to anchor this philosophy, the essay uses a very specific pop culture reference that illustrates the point beautifully.
Oh, the NCIS episode.
Yes. It brings up the television show NCIS, specifically the episode titled Honor Ducky.
For context, this episode dealt with the passing of a deeply beloved, wise, and tenured character.
And it's centered entirely on how the rest of the team struggled with the paralyzing question of how to appropriately honor a life that meant so much to them.
The quotes pulled from the character of Ducky in this essay are absolute showstoppers. I mean, the first one is a concept that genuinely shifted my perspective on mortality. The quote is, "We all die twice, once when our bodies give out, and again when our stories stop being told."
Wow. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this concept of a second death is an ancient and deeply powerful psychological framework. It radically shifts the power dynamic of loss.
Yes.
Think about it. The first death is biological and entirely out of our control. It happens to us. But the second death, that is sociological. And it is entirely up to the survivors.
Ah, I see.
As long as you keep telling the stories, as long as you keep speaking their names aloud and recalling those shared meals and absurd adventures, you are actively preventing that second death. You are keeping them tethered to the present.
That makes a lot of sense.
It is precisely why the essay argues that funerals should really be a celebration of life where it is completely okay to laugh.
I have to play devil's advocate here, though.
Go for it.
It sounds beautiful in theory, right? To celebrate and laugh. But when you are in the thick of that raw initial grief, sitting in a quiet room or a pew, isn't it incredibly difficult to force a celebration? Sometimes the sadness is just overwhelmingly heavy.
That is a very real tension, and the text doesn't shy away from the reality of that heaviness. It isn't about forcing artificial happiness.
No.
It is about holding two competing truths at the exact same time. You are deeply sad for the loss, absolutely, but you are also overwhelmingly grateful for the fact that you were touched by that person's existence.
The joy doesn't just disappear.
Exactly. The joy they brought to your life over decades shouldn't be completely erased or overshadowed by the sadness of their departure. The essay highlights another quote from the episode to emphasize this forward momentum.
Which one was that?
Yesterday is over, change is the essence of life.
Man, which is a tough pill to swallow,
It really is.
but undeniably true.
Yeah.
However, there is another line from Ducky that the author notes resonated more deeply than anything else.
Yeah.
It is this: our pain is a small price for their peace.
That specific framing is profound. Generally, we view grief in modern society as a pathology, a burden, an illness to get over, or a punishment we are forced to endure.
Just something to survive.
Yes. But our pain is a small price for their peace completely reframes the emotional experience. It frames the agonizing pain of loss as a noble sacrifice.
You willingly shoulder the heavy, exhausting weight of missing them.
So that they can finally lay down their own burdens and be at peace.
Exactly. It transforms sorrow from a passive state of suffering into an active act of profound, enduring love.
It changes everything about how you carry that weight. It makes it feel purposeful. And for you listening right now, it is worth pausing to ask yourself,
Yes, absolutely.
how do you keep the stories of your loved ones alive? When you think about the people you have lost, how do your memories serve as an active bridge to their spirit? Do you speak their names, or do you keep them locked away in quiet reflection?
It is a vital question about how we construct our own histories.
Yeah.
And what is so interesting about this text is how it transitions from this deeply intimate, private type of grief to the collective grief we feel for public figures.
The shift in the essay is really seamless.
It notes that it was actually written on March 4th, the day the news broke that the retired AFL Australian rules football announcer Dennis Cometti had passed away. For those who might not follow Australian rules football, this was a monumental loss. Cometti was an absolute institution.
The voice of a generation.
The text uses his passing to illustrate how people we have entirely never met can essentially score the soundtrack of our lives. Along with his co-announcer Bruce McAvaney, Cometti was the voice that defined the rhythm of the season for countless fans.
To really understand the impact here, you have to understand the nature of Australian rules football. It is an incredibly fast-paced, chaotic, 360-degree game played on a massive oval.
It's wild to watch.
There are no offside rules, the ball is constantly in motion, and it is incredibly physical. To broadcast a game like that requires a jazz-like rhythm. You have to be deeply in sync with your partner to avoid stepping on their words or missing the action.
Here's where it gets really interesting. You listen to Cometti and McAvaney broadcast this chaotic game, and their transitions are totally flawless. One stops, the other picks right up. The essay shares a detail Bruce once revealed about how they managed this. It was orchestrated simply by one placing a hand on the other's back.
That is amazing.
Completely silent, physical cue in the middle of a loud, frantic broadcasting booth.
What's fascinating here is what that tiny detail reveals about human connection and mastery. That silent hand on the back represents absolute implicit trust.
They didn't even need to look at each other.
They just felt the rhythm of the other person. And that synergy translates directly to the audience through the television. The author reflects on a memory of a first Friday night game, pointing out that the commentary was so descriptive and perfectly paced that you didn't even need to be looking at the television screen to know exactly the state of the game.
It is true. The essay talks about how sensory these memories are. Think about your own version of this. We all have those voices that are inextricably linked to specific times and places in our lives.
Absolutely.
Maybe it is the voice of a sports announcer or a radio host that you instantly associate with the smell of Friday night pizza, or the feeling of the carpet when you were a kid, sitting entirely too close to the television screen.
It is a perfect example of how deeply intertwined external voices become with our internal personal memories. The sensory details wire themselves together in our brains. When that broadcaster passes away, you aren't just losing a public figure.
You're losing a piece of the architecture of your own childhood memories.
Precisely.
And their language literally infiltrates our own. The text lists off some of Cometti's classic one-off catchphrases, lines that he created on the fly that permanently entered the cultural lexicon.
He was a master with words.
Things like describing a pass as centimeter perfect, or observing a player struggling as being like a cork in the ocean. And the absolute best one mentioned, delusions of adequacy.
Oh, delusions of adequacy is a razor-sharp, brilliant turn of phrase. But from a psychological standpoint, the reason these catchphrases matter is because of how semantic memory works.
Okay, break that down for us.
By giving the audience shorthand phrases that perfectly encapsulate a complex moment, Cometti essentially gave fans a shared language. Every time one of those catchphrases is repeated by a fan in a pub or by a father to a son in the backyard, his legacy is kept alive.
That second death we discussed earlier.
It is delayed yet again.
It is a beautiful way to look at something as simple as a sports catchphrase. And the essay proves this point about shared cultural memory again by shifting gears from unscripted live sports to a massive, heavily scripted cultural milestone.
A very different kind of television.
It takes us all the way back to November of 1981, focusing on an event that literally stopped the soap opera world in its tracks. If you were a fan of General Hospital, you know exactly what this is.
The wedding of Luke and Laura.
The Wedding of Luke and Laura, played by Tony Geary and Jeannie Francis. For context, in 1981, we didn't have streaming or social media to fracture our attention.
That was appointment viewing.
And tens of millions of people tuned in. The text describes this as the ultimate bad boy of Port Charles marrying the girl next door storyline. The author even admits that he was the quintessential bad boy that girls her age would have absolutely loved to date back then.
It is a classic universal narrative trope, the bad boy and the pure-hearted girl. But why did this specific iteration of it work so phenomenally well? And why did it leave such a lasting legacy?
The acting, right?
The essay points out that it wasn't just the sensational writing, it was the incredibly dynamic acting, specifically highlighting Tony Geary's range. He had this rare ability to be intensely, almost frighteningly serious across a dramatic story arc, and then completely flip a switch to be wonderfully, genuinely silly.
It made the character feel like a fully realized human being rather than a one-dimensional soap opera villain. But more than that, it was the undeniable chemistry.
Oh, the chemistry was palpable.
The essay notes that when Geary and Francis were on screen together, they brought out the absolute best in each other's performances. There's this great observation in the text about the specific way Luke looked at Laura. As an audience member, you knew, without a single shadow of a doubt, that she was his entire world.
This raises an important question about how fictional characters teach us real-life lessons. When you watch a performance like that, especially during your formative years, it sticks with you.
It really does.
It becomes a subconscious benchmark for romance, for devotion, and for human connection in your own mind. We absorb these emotional blueprints from the characters we watch. The essay continues to weave through different cinematic and television touchstones to illustrate how diverse these emotional blueprints can be.
The author takes us on a tour of some very specific cinematic memories. Take James Van Der Beek. The essay notes that he is remembered most vividly for the movie Varsity Blues. But it isn't just the movie as a whole. It is a very specific scene. The focus is on the end of the film, the pivotal moment when the teenage football team realizes that the adults in the room are not going to save them. They have to step up, take responsibility, and coach themselves to finish the game.
Think about why that specific moment resonates so deeply that someone would write about it decades later. It is a moment of discovering inner leadership.
Yeah, that transition period.
For a young viewer watching that, it provides a template for autonomy. It visually demonstrates the terrifying but necessary transition from childhood reliance to adult responsibility. That fictional high school football team provides a real-world emotional blueprint for stepping up when the authority figures in your own life fail you.
This makes so much sense. We are borrowing courage from fictional characters. The essay then moves on to Rob Reiner. It acknowledges his start as an actor on All in the Family, but emphasizes that his incredible directing career is what will truly endure.
The lineup of films listed is legendary.
The bucket list. Ghosts of Mississippi, The American President, and of course, The Princess Bride.
A director's legacy is fascinating because it is largely invisible but entirely omnipresent. They shape exactly how we feel, how the story breathes, without us ever seeing their face on the screen.
Right, you feel their presence in the pacing and the emotion.
The text makes the subtle but powerful point that we actively engage with his creative spirit every single time we sit down to rewatch one of those movies. Rewatching a beloved film isn't just a matter of entertainment, it is a ritual of legacy preservation. We are keeping his story going.
Engaging with the creative spirit, I love that. Finally, the essay touches on Robert Duvall. The author mentions having recently written about him and points to his role in the 1998 film Deep Impact as the performance that stands out the most.
Such a powerful role.
He plays the veteran astronaut who goes on this desperate mission to intercept a comet heading for Earth.
And again, notice the highly specific detail pulled from that performance. The essay focuses on how, toward the dramatic end of the movie, Duvall's character takes on the heavy burden of making the necessary ultimate decisions.
He is the elder statesman who keeps the younger, terrified astronauts focused on the mission when absolutely everything is falling apart around them.
It is the ultimate portrayal of mentorship under extreme duress. You watch that, and you absorb a lesson in calm, sacrificial leadership. Which brings us to the core of everything we have been discussing today.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? When we look at all these disparate threads woven together in the legacy they have left behind, from the intimate, agonizing grief of losing a personal mentor, to the collective nostalgia of 1980s soap opera weddings, to the silent hand on the back in a sports broadcasting booth, the overarching theme emerges with absolute clarity.
The theme is that legacy is not a static monument built out of stone. Legacy is a living, breathing mechanism constructed out of highly specific, emotionally resonant memories.
A shared laugh over a meal.
A fictional football team coaching themselves.
A seasoned astronaut keeping his crew calm.
We absorb these fragments of humanity, and their stories only stop when we make the conscious choice to stop telling them. Whether it is your beloved grandfather, an iconic sports announcer, or a talented film director, you hold the extraordinary power to prevent their second death.
We are the active custodians of their legacy. We keep them tethered to the world. And the essay concludes with a final, urgent piece of advice that everyone needs to hear. It is a solemn, but incredibly warm reminder about the present moment. The author writes, "Say what you need to say while you still have time, because life is too short to play the what-if game."
That is the ultimate takeaway. Honoring the dead is vital, but so is honoring the living before they are gone. Do not wait for the eulogy to tell someone how much they mean to you. Tell them today.
Life is too short to play the what-if game. That is a directive to take action today. Thank you so much for joining us on this emotional, expansive deep dive into the nature of memory, the psychology of loss, and the beautiful, complex legacies we all leave behind. We hope this exploration of Cricket Fox's poignant essay has given you a fresh perspective on how to actively honor the people who have shaped your world, whether you knew them intimately or simply admired them from afar.
As we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, building on the profound concepts we have explored. If we accept the premise that we all die twice, and that the second death truly happens when our stories stop being told, how will the modern digital age permanently alter this dynamic?
That is a great question.
Will our perfectly preserved digital footprints, our decades of archived text messages, our Alice emails, our curated social media profiles become the new indestructible stories that keep us immortal? Or, by relying on cold, sterile servers to hold our history, do we risk losing the essential breathing warmth of oral storytelling? Will the quiet evenings and shared laughs described in this essay be drowned out in an infinite, unfeeling sea of digital data? It is a complex question about the future of human memory, and something to consider the next time you share a story about someone you love. Until next time.
As we wrap up this morning, I want to leave you with one thought. Legacy isn't a static monument. It's a living mechanism fueled by the stories you choose to tell. Don't wait for a funeral to say what needs to be said. Tell the people in your life how much they mean to you today. Life is too short to play the what-if game. Thanks for joining me at the corner today. Take care of yourselves, keep breathing, and I'll see you next time.